your host, James Just. With me today is author extraordinaire, Mr. John Cameron. How you doing this week, John?
I'm doing pretty well. I've developed a good attitude about the theater.
Yeah, and you know, you can talk. You guys can listen to that next week. John tells you about how he got to his new attitude.
Yeah.
And you know, I've recovered. You know, I spent the last couple of weeks at the state fair, you know, working the Libertarian Party booth, and you know, it was
hot, man. Hot.
We're inside, John. We did that once. We did that in 2016. We were outside in 110 degrees.
Where were you inside?
We learned that. We were in the hallway between buildings C and D, if you know Cal Expo.
Oh, so a lot of traffic then.
We had lots of foot traffic. You know, it was a interesting experience this year. I've done this a large number of times now, and this was the strangest year. The opening 2 days were kind of fine. Then you had that Trump event thing happened, and you spent like the next 10 days where people were reluctant to have an exchange, right? They'd come in, they'd take the test, and they'd take our little, take some flyers, but they didn't want to have a lot of discussion.
Yeah, they didn't want to have people hear them talking about things that would get them shot.
Yeah, or, well, yeah, we had some really strange conversations about that. And then, you know, the last weekend, the last 3-4 days kind of loosened up and got back to more of a normal routine. So
everybody knows the false flag, man.
Yeah. So it is what it is. It was a fun experience, is I guess what I'm saying. And if hopefully you guys got to walk, some of you got to walk by and talk to a few of you.
I'm sure. If I
sure.
was inside, I might have agreed to show up. But I remember when they were talking about it and it was outside.
Yeah, we haven't done that since 2016, John. Yeah, we learned our lesson in 2016. But what didn't learn their lesson, John, was the City of Sacramento.
Nor will they ever.
Nor will they ever. Yeah. So the people around here like to complain a lot about landlords, right? Oh, Lord, landlords are awful. They're the worst things since, I don't know, sliced bread.
Except for not having a roof over your head. That's worse.
So, but the City of Sacramento is not actually a very good landlord. And I think deliberately, to be honest. I think this is a deliberate case of the landlord.
Why?
Because they want to revitalize. Anyway, the Rio City Cafe is going to close in early August. And the reason they're going to close is because the city wouldn't repair the deck. Or more specifically, the city would not keep the deck in good repair.
Well, and they condemned it.
Yes.
Well, and just because they condemned it doesn't mean that it's dangerous. So, and if your landlord was anybody else and they said something's dangerous, they would be required to fix it, right? But City of Sacramento somehow, despite the hundreds of millions of dollars that it wastes on a regular basis. The other part of it is beautiful. It's the deck that's out on the river. I have eaten there many times. I like it. I'm not sure the food's worth the price, but it's kind of fun to people watch there and look at the river. And that's going to be gone because their landlord, the City of Sacramento, won't fix the deck. So the place can't stay in business and make a profit without the deck.
And so the question becomes, why did the city not fix the deck?
Yeah.
And they'll say it's cost too much. That's a load of malarkey. What they want to do is they want to revitalize that whole...
What does revitalize mean?
Yeah.
Let their buddies have the property to put things in there that nobody will come see, as they have done over and over and over and over again? They want more t-shirt shops, more ice cream places?
What they want is more control, John. That's what all this is about. The city wants to be able to control what happens down there. They don't want to let, you know, the market and nature take its course. They want to dictate what it looks like, who shops there, what kind of shops you have there. They want to be able to dictate all that, and you can't do that if you have profitable businesses taking up space.
Crab Shack's still there.
For how long, John?
Was that Delta Queen? That's still there, right?
But for how long before they redevelop all that stuff out of there?
Well, see, the problem with redevelopment is that if a business is doing it, happens like that. If a city, county, heaven forbid, national government's doing it, it might be 11 years.
Oh, we're still waiting for the old rail yards to get redeveloped, right? Because they wanted it. And why did it take so long? In the heat of a housing crisis, all that area sat undeveloped because they wanted a soccer stadium. That's why it got undeveloped. They wanted the development to be tied into a soccer stadium, and because of that, we didn't have enough housing during the housing boom, during the housing crisis.
We're still in a housing crisis.
Yeah.
Yeah. And point of fact, folks, don't ever, if a stadium isn't enough of a moneymaker for capitalists like me to get a bunch of their capitalist friends together to pitch in money to build it, you don't want it. Basically, it's a money loser. So what that means is that the taxpayers, you and I, are picking up the bill. The profits are going to go into the pockets of the politicians in the form of donations, and their buddies are going to build it. So they kick back, donate. And some business people are going to make a profit off of it, but you and I are going to foot the bill. So if the crown jewel of recent development of stadiums is it still called Chase, where the Golden State Warriors play right on the ocean, basically, in San Francisco. Private money.
Well,
Printing money happened like that.
Oh, the same thing with that stadium down in LA where the Rams and the Chargers both now play. That was built with $1 billion of private money.
Private money.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
it's not all good, though. I'm sure Jerry Jones has built something in Dallas where basically the alignment of the stadium, I'm sure he micromanaged it because he micromanages everything, is so that the sun shines directly in the eyes of players and fans at one end and then the other end, depending on the weather. And so it's a very interesting place to play. Well, but normally people are smarter than that.
That's not actually unusual.
And I bet he got some of his buddies in state government to pony up the money for it.
Well, the old Texas stadium, if I remember right, had the hole in the roof, and it was the same thing. Yeah. Is one side of the stadium got shade, and the other side of the stadium got heat. Yeah. That's how you work these things. But the city of Sacramento is not just playing games with Rio City Cafe. They're playing games with grocery stores and anybody who essentially
Target.
uses
Walmart,
a cart, right?
Costco.
Yeah, anybody who uses a grocery cart. If your grocery cart gets stolen,
that's what they haven't passed it yet. Two people want to have this law. Let's get
John,
their names.
It's going to go. You know this law is going to get passed.
Well, anyway, tell people how stupid the people that supposedly govern this are.
This is not the first place that's done this. What they want to do is they want to punish Walmart, your local grocery store, anybody with a shopping cart that gets stolen by somebody and then abandoned. They're going to punish the grocery store.
No.
And you have to put all kinds of markings and all kinds of expensive tracking devices onto your grocery cart. And, we've discussed this many, many times, John. I don't know how many times I'm going to have to say this. The end consumer pays all costs. The grocery store, Walmart, is not going to pay that cost. You are. That's what's going to happen. Every single time, John. Yeah. And these politicians, rather than deal with the criminals who are robbing our places blind, who are stealing shopping carts, they're going to punish the victim.
But if an employee of, let's say, Target tackled somebody trying to steal the shopping cart, they'd probably go to jail.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because we found out, and we'll talk about this a little bit more later, I suspect, is that what we found out recently is that crimes against people, the government doesn't care so much about. Your people, your property, they don't care so much about. Crimes against government policy, on the other hand. You have a crime against policy, and you are the worst criminal to ever walk the face of the earth.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, you got it. And folks, that if you riot somewhere and burn down a store, they're not covered by insurance because that's basically an act of God. So the idea that insurance is going to pay for the business that you lit on fire because you got all excited about some political something or other and burned it to the ground. People that suffer are the owners and
the owners and the community that no longer has that store to use.
Insurance is not covering that.
No. Yeah. And at some point, insurances would have to stop. Even if they did, they couldn't cover it for long. No. Where do insurance get their money? They get their money from their customers. Yeah. And guess who their customers is? You. Yeah. So there's been some other interesting political discussions, I guess. No, that's the wrong word I'm looking for. Anyway, Mr. Richard Fields is coming up.
Changes in apparent leadership.
Yes. Changes in apparent leadership. Well, anyway, Biden has gone bye-bye, and Mr. Richard Field has something to say about it. So let's see what Richard's got to say this week.
Hi, this is Richard Fields with this week's Report from the Fields. Joe Biden's weekend at Biden's presidential campaign has mercifully come to an end. More troubling, the remaining 6 months of his presidency continue. But that's another story. Biden, or one of his aides, quit his campaign with a post on X from Biden's beach house in Delaware on Sunday morning, July 21st. Perhaps as an afterthought, he made a second X post endorsing VP Kamala Harris to run as the Democratic nominee in his stead. Within hours, the entirety of legacy media was on board with glowing stories about the first woman of color running for president. Within days, Kamala had rounded up enough delegate votes for the nomination. When Kamala ran for president in 2020, she dropped out due to poor polling numbers in December of 2019, before any primary ballots were cast. As such, she is the only presidential candidate to receive a major party nomination without receiving a single primary vote since Gerald Ford secured the Republican nomination in 1976. So much for the Democrats saving our democracy. Early polling shows that Republican Donald Trump has a slight lead over Kamala, but it's within the margin of error. So, barring a miraculous third-party win, Kamala could be our next president. We already know what an awful president Trump was. He set record deficits. He started a tariff war with China, which means higher consumer prices for Chinese goods for Americans. He signed on to the COVID propaganda and instigated the lockdowns and questionable vaccines we were all strongly encouraged to take. All of that contributed to inflation as high as 9%, and which continues to this day. He scapegoated immigrants for all of the economic problems he caused, and he continues to do that to this day. His judicial appointments paved the way for states to outlaw abortion. In some states, that is now happening. Despite his pandering to the Libertarian National Convention, he is no libertarian. If for no other reason than promulgating huge federal deficits at $35 trillion and growing, another trillion every 2 or 3 months, the deficit is the essential existential issue for America. No libertarian can, in good course, support Trump. So let's try to divine where Kamala comes down on the issues. First, she is almost certainly complicit in the Biden administration's media censorship efforts. She buys into the global warming scam. She is on record as being even more extremely anti-fossil fuel than Biden was. She would ban fracking. For the record, fracking is the most efficient way to get more natural gas, the cleanest burning fossil fuel on the planet. Fracking causes no problems with well water. The fearmongers have not figured out that it takes place thousands of feet below the water table. Kamala wants to ban fracking. The Howard University, her undergraduate degree is in economics from Howard University. As far as I know, there are no economics courses that look at the Austrian school or even the monetarist school of thought at Howard. The Howard University Economics Department mostly just regurgitates Keynesian and neo-Keynesian economic dogma. That's what got us into this mess. It's not going to get us out. And Kamala's father was a professor of economics who taught Marxist economics. With Kamala as a in a decision-making position regarding the economy, what could possibly go wrong? Modern monetary theory as a government policy, anyone? I've previously put forward the theory that the very people who are attracted to political power are those who want to force others to live the way those in power prefer. Control freaks, precisely the kind of people who should never get political power. These kinds of power seekers are also the kinds of people who will use any means necessary to attain power, like at age 29 becoming the girlfriend of the then 60-year-old married Speaker of the Assembly in California, Willie Brown. I'm sure that it was true love, or at least true lust, and not the lust for power, and the gift of a BMW, or the well-paid little work patronage appointments to the California Unemployment Insurance Appeals Board or the Medical Assistance Commission. As DA, she obtained more than 1,900 marijuana convictions, and in an interview, laughingly admitted to her own use of pot. She introduced a program threatening parents of school truants with a $2,500 fine and a year in jail. As Attorney General, she opposed California's ban on affirmative action. She argued in court against the early release of state prisoners, saying that they were necessary for firefighting duties, at well below minimum wage, I'm sure. And I'm merely scratching the surface of Kamala's demonstrated lust for and abuse of power. So once again, libertarians have a choice for voting for an evil Republican or an evil Democrat. Both will increase the pace of America's descent into bankruptcy, probably through hyperinflation. Both will infringe on the economic and personal freedoms of Americans. Neither will disentangle us from our foreign policy of military adventurism. Libertarian presidential candidate Chase Oliver may not win, but at least he is not evil. That's this week's Report from the Fields. See you again next week.
Thank you, Richard. You know, as usual, Richard always has something unique perspective on the world, right? Frankly, for us, the question for Biden was, why did he take so long to leave? Really? I mean, any objective observer saw that he was not going to be able to finish a second term, so why didn't they allow...
Why is he still our sitting president? Would be my question.
Well, that's not even all that unusual. We had Wilson sat for 2.5 years, right, as essentially a vegetable.
Yeah.
So, you know...
Well, and JFK was stoned out of his mind on pain meds for, you know...
Who knows how long?
Who knows how long?
The last year and a half of Reagan, he was probably not much functional.
I'll fight you over that one.
Yeah. Year and a half or so. They locked him away for the last year and a half. So whenever they start locking people away, I kind of assume that they're not as fully functional as they wanted them to seem.
Well, that means basically because Biden's been locked away since before the election. So.
Exactly, John. That's exactly my point. That's exactly my point.
Anyway, speaking for somebody, never mind. You want to lead into
no, go ahead.
For somebody that should be locked away because he's a murderer, a dictator, a apologist for he's not even an apologist. He's basically a murderer and dictator who jails his opposition. Maduro. Election victory spells trouble for Kamala Harris. Yeah, we actually have a little cheat sheet in front of us. Boy, you want to...
Okay, so what has happened is all the polls and all before the election victory...
The polls and the proof.
The polls and the proof, and it was Maduro had no chance at winning, right? He was in the 20s at best, and the other guy had like a 60-point lead. It was literally absurd, and then all of a sudden he managed to win by a percentage, by 1 percentage point.
Yeah, now he's saying it's 4 or 5. Yeah. And he says he's got the proof.
He's got the proof. Yeah, well, because he filled out all the ballots. Of course, you got the proof.
No, they got machines there. And an independent, not really an independent, there was an opposition party got a hold of, what, out of the 5,000, they got a hold of 1,763 of the tickets that were spit out by the machines and took copies of them. And it shows that 60-30. In other words, the opposition won by landslide. Now, unfortunately, the opposition is also socialist, so the country's basically not going to change. It's going to have nicer thugs running it than...
Yes. Well, for now, right?
At least for now. But if then they run it into the ground, then maybe what happens in Argentina will happen there. Because Venezuela's sitting on just a pot of oil. They got more oil than Saudi Arabia. And the people in Venezuela had a higher standard of living and greater... GDP per capita than the U.S. They were the best educated and all the rest of that. And then they got socialism in, although the New York Times is blaming it on capitalists killing the country, even though they've had socialists running the country.
Which is funny, because for a long time, companies like Shell, BP, or whatnot would lease the oil rights. Every year they'd write Venezuela a big, huge check.
Big honking check.
And Venezuela was fine. But then Venezuela got greedy and said, hey, we want all of the money.
And we were going to nationalize the fields and the equipment. Oh, but you got to help us with spare parts, and you got to help us run it. And
Yeah.
No. So anyway, this is what happens always. Socialists take your money and I don't know what they spend it on.
Yeah, they spent it on themselves, John.
Yeah.
That's essentially
But anyway,
what
so
happened.
and it's trouble for Kamala because Biden loosened the reins on it, and they're all pro-socialism, and
Yeah, but what essentially what happened is there were some trade restrictions and other conditions on Venezuela, and Biden said, well, if you give us a free election, we'll loosen some of these restrictions up on you. So they loosened some restrictions. He promised a free election, didn't get it, and so we didn't get it, and so now we're stuck here with essentially a civil war.
Tighten it up again.
Yeah, it's essentially a civil war down there at the moment. And so,
but they already took away all the guns, so you can't have a civil war. So the key to that, folks, is if you feel socialism coming, don't let them take your guns.
yeah.
Because anyway, and for some reason, all these kids and not so many kids in this country believe that socialism will work, despite the fact that it's never worked anywhere.
Because it sounds good, John. You actually can get it from somebody who doesn't have a perspective of history. It sounds great.
No.
It sounds all
terrible.
Well, because we have the education that makes me understand what they actually mean. If you're a 17-year-old, 20-year-old, all you've been taught is like what people are spoon feeding you. It sounds great. No one's telling you the downsides.
Nobody's telling you the 200 million people that died that you can pin directly on it.
No, they're not going to tell you. So we're going to move on quickly because we've only got like 6 minutes and we want to cover a couple of these things. The Democrats are demanding you celebrate Kamala Harris for everything but what you should actually be looking for in someone to lead the country.
Celebrate her because she's a woman. Celebrate her because she's a member of a minority group. Celebrate her because she's part of a disenfranchised group. All of that stuff. But if you're
Actually want competence.
Yeah.
If you want actual competence, that doesn't seem to matter.
A little hard to find.
Yeah. Or how about not corrupt? I mean, as we know, as libertarians, we despise Kamala Harris, not because of any political things. It's because, quite frankly, she's willing to withhold evidence to keep people in jail.
And she was forced to not withhold evidence by the commie courts in California. Actually found her behavior so bad, they forced her to uncover the evidence, which kept somebody off of, they were on death row, got them off of death row. And she put lots and lots of people in jail for drug crimes, and then giggled on an interview when somebody asked if, she giggles a lot. There's a suspicion that she might like to, asked if she ever used drugs. And then, we don't need to go into the Willie Brown stuff. There's so many memes out there about that now.
Yeah, and
but she was incompetent in every job, and now they're trying to say, even though it's in print on Axios, it's crazy. Axios said, Kamala, the border czar. And now they're saying, oh, nobody ever. And then Axios said, oh, nobody ever made her the border czar. You printed it.
Well, I had a conversation last night I don't understand the media's obsession with the word czar. I have never understood that at the beginning.
You know what happened to the czars in Russia, right? The czar and the czarina and everything else?
All right, we're going to move on real quick, John. So conservatives have been afraid that the Biden Justice Department has weaponized the FBI, DOJ,
Afraid?
all these various institutions.
Not afraid it's happening.
And so now there's actually been a Department of Justice data actually kind of proves that what all this fear.
They'll deny it.
Yes.
But and it's the difference. This is in one particular instance. They're basically treating people who protest in front of abortion clinics with a different brand of justice than they treat people who protest in front of Catholic churches and pro-life organizations. And they're branding people who organize in near abortion clinics, if they get together in a group, as being part of a criminal conspiracy, and throwing them in jail with long prison terms. Whereas if people basically firebomb an organization that is a right to life thing, they're not pursuing nearly as much justice.
Which we've seen on protests, right? You can get away with these peaceful but fiery protests on one side, but you know, if you have
nobody's going to jail. Somebody wanders, some idiot is stupid enough to walk through the halls of
justice. But John, before we go, let's talk about stupid idiots. California, after disastrously raising the fast food prices, fast food minimum wage to $20 an hour, they're considering doing it more. Yeah. You want to raise it even higher because it worked so well the first time. We talk about idiots. Is he wearing
sunglasses all the time now because he's just given up and he's stoned all the time?
You know, we'd all be better off if he was stoned all the time, John, I think is really what would happen. But how do these people this stupid, how can they go out and look and see what an abject disaster this has been and then decide, you know what, how we solve this, we're going to raise it more. Yeah. So the question is, they don't like workers. They don't like average.
No, they love workers as long as they pay union dues, because union dues go.
No, they like unions. They don't like workers. They like the money unions give them. They don't care 2 cents about the average worker. They don't care 2 cents about the mom and pop restaurant owner or the franchisee owner.
Because those people all vote Republican. Why would you want those people? Get rid of them.
Get rid of them. All right, John, one more. We got a minute, so let's cover this real fast. The Olympic Village is ditching their woke approach to food because, well, athletes complained.
Well, it was no air conditioning because it's not green enough, too much meat because meat is evil, so they're feeding them a lot of vegetarian stuff. And Olympic level athletes need massive amount of calories and protein, folks. Need good food. So they started bringing in their own food. They brought in their own beds, their own air conditioning, now they're bringing in their own food.
Which is silly. You're going to fly a bunch of people in on airplanes, but then you're going to cheap out on steak and beans because, for the environment. No, right. It's absolutely insane, John. It really is. And thank you for being here with us tonight, John. Thank you for watching us. We are just about out of time. Next week we've got, what are we covering next week, John? I already forgot. So anyway, we're out of here. Thanks for joining us. Have a good night. Please remember.